and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. Let's take a look at this breaking development. Justin Trudeau, the former Prime Minister of Canada, has now spent months making explosive allegations against India, triggering one of the biggest diplomatic crises between the two countries. Now, the Indian diplomat who found himself at the center of that row is demanding an unconditional apology. Former Indian High Commissioner to Canada, Sanjay Kumar Verma, has said that his credibility was destroyed after Trudeau's government publicly linked him falsely to the investigation into the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Sanjay Verma said that Trudeau should have waited for the investigation to progress before making public allegations, adding that no evidence was presented to support the claims against him. His remarks come as Nijjar's murder investigation continues, with recent reports focusing attention on the alleged role of the members of the Bishnoi gang. The investigation remains ongoing. Meanwhile, Trudeau has been making headlines for a very different reason. The former Canadian Prime Minister has been spotted appearing in a music video. For Sanjay Verma, however, the issue remains far more serious. His message is clear. If his reputation was damaged by unproven allegations, it is time for Justin Trudeau to apologize. Let's open up this conversation. Joining me on the telecast is Ambassador Basuti Mukherjee. Ambassador, how the mighty have fallen after the US authorities, along with the Five Eyes, have come to a conclusion that it was Lawrence Bishnoi and his gang that was behind the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. There have been 24 arrests that have been made from this syndicate that has been spread in Canada and Singapore and United Kingdom and some other places. Lawrence Bishnoi himself has been indicted by the US authorities, and the question is pertinent. It is important that Sanjay Verma and along with him number of staffers, officials, diplomats who were working at the Indian High Commission in Canada were discredited. They were, their prestige was questioned, and they were called persona non grata. They were asked to leave the country. I mean, how humiliating is that? And then after that, there has been no apology from the previous government or the current government after what a fiasco that has happened, and that led to the differences in the relationship between India and Canada, diplomatically, people to people, and economic ties that faced complete destruction.
Thank you, Megha. Allow me to, first of all, explain the predicament of Ambassador Sanjay Verma, whom I know very well. He is one of our most outstanding officers in the Foreign Service, whom we sent as High Commissioner to Canada because we have traditionally sent our best officers to Canada. It's a long-standing bilateral relationship. There's a huge Indian diaspora there. There are huge business interests, etc., etc. In the case of Ambassador Sanjay Verma, he was named as a person of interest, as High Commissioner, with no proof. This went public. After that, he was declared persona non grata. And there was also a rumor that the then Canadian government, in breach of all diplomatic protocol, would actually arrest him, which is why he exited the country in a very discreet manner to a friendly country and then came back. When he says about the damage to his reputation, I fully agree. Ambassador Sanjay Verma was at the height of his career. He need not have gone to Canada. It was the government who decided. But more than that, what is particularly unfortunate is he was given no time, or his family, to pack his belongings, to leave in a dignified manner, to say goodbye to his diplomatic colleagues out of the Foreign Office. He was virtually overnight treated like some kind of a criminal who was going to be arrested. He came to Delhi in a situation which has never happened to any officer of the Indian Foreign Service right from 1962, when at the height of the Chinese Revolution, the Chinese Revolutionary Guard took out 2 of our young first secretaries and paraded them down the streets of Beijing with shoes round their necks. One of them became foreign secretary, the other one committed suicide. Since then, never has any brilliant foreign service officer been disgraced in this manner. I do believe that I will not hold the present Canadian government responsible, but I do believe that the predecessor government should at least apologize, because when he says that the loss of reputation is permanent, I am tempted to quote to you what Shakespeare had said when he said, "Who steals my purse steals trash, but he who robs me of my good name robs me of that which not enriches him but makes me poor indeed." And as you know, Megha, once your reputation has been damaged after a long career, it cannot be restored fully, but at least an apology would do. Megha.
Eric Wahlberg is a political analyst from Toronto, joining me on the telecast. Mr. Wahlberg, what is your objective assessment of the situation that led to the problems that arose between India and Canada diplomatically, economically, and people-to-people ties as well were hampered? This emerged from the single biggest allegation that was made by the then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau himself against the Indian diplomats and the Indian High Commissioner Sanjay Verma. And would it be correct for him to come out and publicly apologize for the falsehoods that he was spreading?
Well, I don't really understand why it's important to have the ex-Prime Minister now speaking in effect on behalf of the Canadian government. He's no longer Prime Minister, so I believe that at the time the situation was calmed, that this was a mistaken allegation, and the Canadian government basically withdrew from that claim. And now I see that Carney, the new Prime Minister, is meeting with Modi and invited into the G7, and is really trying to make up relations. So I think Canada, it was a mistake to rush to that judgment on Trudeau's part, but the Canadian government has backtracked, and relations are, I think, on a good level. The trouble with the Canadian connection is there was a very serious terrorist act in the 1980s. A plane was shot down, and it was involved in the Punjabi Sikh, these terrorists and dissidents. So that really, everyone in Canada remembers this and is not happy that this kind of terrorism was brought to Canadian soil. Indian terrorism, you've got Punjabis, you've got Sikhs, independence movements, and a neutral country like Canada gets caught up. So I don't see this myself as a problem now, and I understand I'm not Indian, so I'm not seeking the maximum groveling on the part of Canada, but I think that this is not really an issue.
Yeah. But you think the Justin Trudeau government was politically motivated in making these accusations without having enough proof? And do you think Trudeau government single-handedly should be held responsible for destroying its relationship with India?
Well, I don't see the relationship destroyed. Canada has a huge Indian emigre population, and there are good relations on a people-to-people level. This is, it's not, I don't see this personally, and I don't think the Canadian government now sees this as a serious roadblock to continued good relations with India. I think
Do you also think? Do you also
there's
think?
no real political
So are you
motivation.
saying
It's
this
not as
was?
if Trudeau's denouncing the Indian government. It's just it jumped to a conclusion. I mean, the assassination of Nijar, uh, he was he was considered by India as virtually a terrorist in his advocating for independence, and his disappearance, who benefits? I guess that was the loose assumption that was used to point a finger at the Indian government, because the Indian government is against such separatist movements. But it's a fine point in Canadian minds as to who actually is involved, and there is an extradition. The U.S. Wants this Bishnoi to be investigated and tried in American soil. I don't know if India is willing to allow that extradition, which would keep this whole issue in the news, which it is not now. So it's a question of back and forth. Who wants to see the news? This is not considered a major issue, I don't think, in Canada.
But
we have
are you at this
problem.
point? I mean, are you at this point of assuming that it was a oops moment for Justin Trudeau, that it was an innocent mistake that he made, that it was not a calculated attempt to malign and discredit India, the government of India?
No. It was not an attempt to discredit the government of India. It was an oops moment, as you put it. And I think Carney is doing his best to paper over this. No one's going to be happy with, you never please everybody in any kind of decision. So I think it would be good for India to move on and to work with the new Canadian government, which is very much interested in good relations with India.
And what do you make of the Kanishka bombing that took place, that led to the death of more than 100 people? At this point of time, those who were behind bars have been allowed to walk scot-free, and this has happened in the 1980s, and we are at this point of time still waiting for some sort of justice to be given to the family members.
This is 40 years ago we're talking, and I can't really see that this is ever going to be resolved to everybody's satisfaction. It was a terrible event, and again, there are so many terrible events that are occurring. It's hard to provide justice for everybody.
I was just going to completely shrug it off. I mean, an erudite, intelligent man who is sitting at the highest seat of the political leadership of Canada has made a quote-unquote innocent mistake by not accusing one individual, not accusing one criminal, accusing the entire government, Indian government, of saying that they were the ones who plotted, orchestrated the murder of Nijar. I have with me Ambassador Basuti Mukherjee, who also wants to make a point before I go to my other panelists. Yeah.
Very quickly, just to tell our respected Canadian panelists that it is not acceptable to destroy the reputation of the Indian High Commission in Canada, the Indian High Commissioner and his officials. It is unfortunate that the mental agony and turmoil that they went through, apart from the physical difficulties, are not appreciated, it seems, by our Canadian counterparts. I would also like to add, Megha, that imagine if the same thing had been done by us to the Canadian High Commissioner in Delhi, if we had accused the High Commissioner of cohorting with the Khalistanis, of acting in anti-Indian activities, if we had said he's a person of interest, if we had declared him persona non grata with less than 24 hours to leave, what would have been the Canadian reaction? And finally, I am deeply shocked, Megha, that our Canadian panelist is saying that what happened 40 years ago happened 40 years ago. I'm sorry, Canada, like India, is a country based on rule of law, and because justice has been delayed for so long, doesn't mean that justice will be denied. Not at all. India will never give up its struggle to bring to justice the perpetrators of this atrocious tragedy in which more than 100 Canadians died and which has been so beautifully covered by NewsX, including you, Megha, through several episodes. Thank you for giving me the floor again.
Professor Madhu Nalapat, in a situation such as this, would it not be right for the political party, which is the Liberal Party that still continues to be in power, which is led by a different Prime Minister, which is Mark Carney currently, to come out publicly, realize the mistake that it made, admit that what the Trudeau government and Trudeau, the Prime Minister himself at the time, made was egregious, was wrong at so many levels, and just simply make an apology?
Look, Megha, I'd like to point out that we were all shocked when we saw on television the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at that point in time rise and say that the government of India was responsible for this murder. He didn't say any particular official or anything. The government of India. I mean, this is a complete travesty in which he can defame an entire government, and that to a friendly government of a fellow Commonwealth country. It's absolutely absurd. At that point in time itself, Megha, remember we had talked about this man, this person who is now deceased, the Ninja, I think his name is. I mean, he's been part of some narcotics cartels. He was part of some smuggling cartels, and these cartels were ruining Canada. You can ask our Canadian guest how many Canadians have got addicted to drugs and narcotics. And these gangs have been very active in spreading drugs and narcotics all over Canada. And what about terror? I mean, how can you call perpetrators of terror people responsible for hundreds of people dying in India? You have 100 people dying in Kanishka. That's an unsolved murder. It doesn't speak any very well of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, whom I have greatly admired and still admire to some extent. But the fact of the situation is that this is a clear defamation of India, because the government of India is an elected government. It's not placed there by somebody else. It's placed by the people. This is a clear libel on the entire people of India, that they will elect a government that does this kind of unspeakable action. And Justin Trudeau is now running around, I mean, doing bunga bunga music and parties on video. I wish the chap had done that in the beginning. He would have been a great bunga bunga dancer and singer. Now, instead of it today, he's a failed prime minister. So for Justin Trudeau's own sake, for his own reputation in the future, I wish the man had become an actor and a bunga bunga dancer. I'm sure he's great fun to watch, even though he's 57 years old. But it would be, I mean, but to be,
Yeah.
he's so unserious. It's proof that he's unserious, that he's entered upon this profession from politics. And I would like to finally say, Megha, that I don't believe any kind of apology is going to come from Justin Trudeau. As far as Mark Carney is concerned, he has shown in action that he is wanting good relations with India. And he has, of course, not got into intra-party feuds by labeling X or Y wrong, especially if his predecessor, the former Prime Minister. So I don't expect that. But I think the relationship between Canada and India is back on a very firm footing. And I'd also like to say that the libel of Justin Trudeau was not only against the government of India, the entire Sikh community. The Sikhs are one of the most dedicated and patriotic communities in India. And they're the most hardworking community in Kerala, I mean, in Canada. And they're in Kerala also, by the way, and they work very hard here. But I want to say very clearly that this is a defamation of that noble community. A few people there who were motivated by Pakistan, who were funded by drug terror, who were given arms and equipment, and who went on killing sprees. I have visited Punjab during those years when there was turmoil there, right in the 1990s. I've seen for myself the fear in people's eyes. I've seen for myself the cruel and criminal manner in which these gangs function. And to say that, I mean, somebody who is a known funder of these gangs, somebody who is a known terrorist, even then, we believe, as Ambassador Masudi Mukherjee said, in due process. We were disappointed with the Canadian government. We are very disappointed with the Canadian government, successor to the Canadian governments.
Yes.
Mark Carney has moved on and India has moved on. But again, I'd like to say, don't expect any kind of apology, any kind of contriteness, because Justin Trudeau is now showing what he is. He's a bunga bunga dancer.
Okay,
Nothing is serious
fair
for
enough.
him.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the man is going through a midlife crisis, and perhaps very visibly so. But okay, Patrick, with your opinion in the way things have unfolded, particularly in the past few weeks, suddenly the Five Eyes have woken up and taken notice and given India the clean chit, if at all they have the authority to do so, which they do not. Do you think these countries, the Five Eyes, work in cohort? And when it's the Trump government, things are different versus when it's the Biden government and the Trudeau government. There is a certain narrative that is peddled.
So first of all, Canada doesn't have a foreign intelligence agency. So Trudeau was depending on Five Eyes intelligence to decide what he had decided. That means, let's understand, Trudeau is definitely responsible for whatever he did, but he was not alone. It was not an individual decision. It was an institutional decision of that entire group. You may call it cartel, you may call it whatever you want. Let's put it this way. Yes, definitely when Biden was there, a lot of things were happening. There was an organization called Hindenburg, which was coming out with dubious reports in spite of being a short-selling entity itself. And when Biden lost the election, Hindenburg just vanished in thin air. So, the insult, as Ambassador Mukherjee mentioned, was definitely on the ambassador, but it was not an insult on the ambassador only. It was an insult to the whole country. So they were humiliating India, and there are various reasons for which they were trying to do it, because this entire Western Anglo-Saxon bloc is very, very uncomfortable with the rise of a country like India. And all of this, let's understand, all of this started right after the G20 summit in India in 2023, when India ensured that African Union gets a legitimate space in that entire table. And many of these countries are not very happy about it. So today, you may say that when it comes to Trump administration, yes, US aid has been stopped. US aid as an organization has been disbanded. You may say there is a difference in their approach when it comes to on issues of Niger, but I don't think in principle their approach towards countries like India have not changed. Have changed. I don't think they have changed. In principle, they do have a problem with India's strategic autonomy, and they will try to do a lot of things in terms of creating problems for us. One day they will say there's a 500% tariff. Second day they will say, India can go to hell. Third day they will say India is a great country. So Trudeau was a typical fall guy who would, make that statement. But the whole Five Eyes intelligence was hand in glove in that. All of these countries tried everything to pin India down, but they realized that India's strategic autonomy is not a seasonal thing. It is here to stay. They tried everything. Even then, India's economy remained resilient. And now you see many of those countries are going ahead and having free trade agreement with us. We have the highest respect for Canada or New Zealand or United States. But it is important to understand that the change in Canada, when Canada's approach for India, I hope it becomes institutional and it doesn't remain individual. Mark Carney's statements, we deeply respect that. But what happens next is the most important thing. Remember, these separatist entities remained in Canada, were existing in Canada before this Trudeau guy came in. Even before him, they were there. And it took more than 40 years for Canada to come and acknowledge what happened in Kanishka. To say that, oh, it's 40 years, let's not remember. I don't think a lot, don't take it personally. I respect the decisions of Government of India and Government of Canada, but had Trump not stated that Canada will become the 51st state of United States, the change of heart of Canada would not have happened.
Okay.
Today, they are feeling threatened from the same group which they have coalesced with and targeted countries like India. Is it not true that for a long period of time, Canada was a safe haven for all kinds of separatist entities? In the name of freedom of expression, in the name of refugee, in the name of political dissidents? Are we not, I mean, is it not the same country being targeted and accused of by the Sri Lankans or the Bangladeshis for the 19 and people who are responsible in 1971 war, or the LTT elements be given safe haven in Canada? What is Canada's stand on that? So we all want a peaceful world. And India is one of the primary countries which have respected peace, which has respected the integrity of the countries. Unfortunately, we have been at the receiving end of our nicety.
Okay.
Somewhere, I think India's nicety have been taken for granted. I hope the change of heart is permanent and it is not temporary only for 5 years. Back to you.
Okay. Ambassador Mukherjee, quickly coming to you before I wrap this up.
I just wanted to say that the change of heart is permanent or not is for Canadian voters to decide. I agree with Pratik. But there is no doubt that Trudeau was completely captive to a very small Khalistani majority that put at risk Canada's national interest vis-a-vis India. Secondly, I do believe that unless the Canadian government gives justice back to those who lost their near ones in that horrible plane accident, and make some kind of restitution to the manner in which the Indian High Commissioner and his colleagues and his family members were stripped of their reputation for integrity and honesty, pushed out of the country in less than 24 hours, is not a good example. Fortunately, in India, we don't have mob rule, Megha. Otherwise, in some other country, which I don't want to mention, this kind of hooliganish behavior, completely in variance with international law regarding diplomatic protocol, would have had severe consequences in the country of origin. 100%, I can tell you, having been practicing diplomat for 39 years. I thank you very much for having this debate. It is important that the people of India and the Indian diaspora in Canada, all of them, hear this debate. Thank you, Megha.
Okay, on that note, I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views.